Thank you, thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidil mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Ladies and gentlemen, reverends, holy distinguished guests, I am going to talk about how we can further our cooperation, interfaith cooperation, and just to give you an idea what this is all about. Ever since man was put on the earth, he has been very inquisitive, intuitive, and very impatient to learn what is around him. Him means both men and women together. So he starts to think, gathers information, and finds answers. And this is what we call knowledge. So he learns from the environment, and he puts them all together and keeps adding and using different modes of thinking. He puts in a toolbox which we call knowledge. Every tool is a different subject. So he will use different tools to explore different things he sees in the environment. From the civilizations we have around the world for the last 5,000 or 7,000 years, we have seen explosion of knowledge everywhere around the world. Like, for example, the major 6 civilizations have contributed to knowledge in different ways, to different extents, some more and some very little. The first such major civilization is the Mesopotamia, or the Iraq Euphrates civilization. And they have not only invented a lot of things, but they have made a lot of groundwork for other civilizations to thrive with the invention of many things, knowledge and technology. And to this extent, I think the pyramids are a very good example. Although Mesopotamia didn't have any pyramids as such, they have something called ziggurats, which are the predecessors for pyramids. And when I studied this, I realized that this pyramid thing is a very good example of knowledge transfer throughout the world. Just imagine, 5,000 years ago. In fact, this is the first such pyramid that was built in Egypt, and it's more than 5,000 years old. And you can see from the chronology of the pyramid building how it has gone around the world. And I think the last place to reach is China. But the knowledge all this time is how precise mathematics they had, how much sciences they knew, astronomy, chemistry, physics, engineering, all this. Now, just goes to show what humankind is capable of, even in those early days as well. So, what has the pyramids contributed? It has again contributed to the toolbox, a lot of knowledge. And this has gone around the world. What does it show? It shows the extent of knowledge that was going around the world in those days. And also it shows there was something called faith, because they believed in life after death. That's a symbol of the pyramids. Now, the pinnacle of the pyramids, the civilization, I think is reflected in the expansion of the Islamic civilization, or Andalus, which was regarded as the first universal civilization. And not only this civilization built, it also saved a lot of knowledge that was previously around from the Greeks. Then they invented, look forward, and they have exploded their knowledge. Why? Because there was peace and cooperation and harmony. I think this is the message that we have to take home. If we cooperate, if we have peace, we can achieve a lot more. Now, Stanley Lane Poole, in his book, he said, this is one of the greatest but the most underrated civilizations that of all times. This is the largest empire of its own at the time, and without people like Farabi, this world would not have advanced as it has today. A lot of inventions were made which made the world we live in much better. There were so many fathers of the knowledge those days. Ibn Haytham, Biruni, the father of optics, Indology, momentum, medicine, all these fathers were mostly from Andalus. So what is this Andalus civilization about? It is mostly, you can say, a connection between the Orient and the Occident, and between antiquity and Renaissance. And also, because of this Andalus civilization, it was a crucial transmission point for the knowledge to the Christian-dominated West. This is what the Andalus civilization was about. Now, what was the reason? As I said, it was the golden age of tolerance and reasoning. It was the first great golden age of the Jews of the Andalus. Therefore, what do we learn from this? We learn that the Andalus civilization was based on a book, the Quran, and what this has shown is how a book of this caliber can come into play into a civilization and bring knowledge throughout the world. So, what does the Quran say? The Quran says this is a book of guidance and instructions for those conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah says that through this book, Allah has taught us what we knew not. And indeed, like the Torah or the Gospel, this was a guidance for everybody. So, is the Quran such a miraculous book? Let's see. It was a revelation sent 1400 years ago to an unlettered prophet in the middle of Arabian desert. So, how does this book come to play so much today and from the time it was sent? The book says, chapter 2, verse number 2, there is no doubt that this is guidance for who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also Allah is challenging anybody to think about it, to reflect on what the content of the Quran is. And they will know there are no contradictions in the book. If it had been from somebody else, it would have contained contradictions. So, this is a book whose verses were perfected and present in detail from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is wise and acquainted with everything. So, what does the book say? What do you find? The Quran says in Surah Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 36, that everything is in pairs. So what do we know today? From the biology, we know that there are males and females, There are plectron, nectrons, phloem, and in molecular biology we know in the DNA there are nucleosides, nucleotides, and in chemistry we know that there are pairs in the quantum level. And the first such discovery was made in 1936 and awarded the Nobel Prize for the discovery of positron. So, again the book says, the Quran says, everything was made from water. How do we know? Looking at the cells, we know that the cells contain 70 to 90% water. Again, the book says, Quran says, Allah sent iron. Sent means from somewhere else. And now we know that iron is formed in very big, massive stars, which takes a lot of energy, 4 times the amount of energy of the solar system to produce iron. Likewise, water, again, was sent, and we know from the deuterium in the of the hydrogen that this is older than even the solar system. So that water came from outside. So many Nobel Prizes have been won based on the Holy Quran, a lot of things that the Quran says, and the behavior of the bees, the expansion of the universe in 2011 and 2016, the EU autophagy, fasting, the benefits of fasting, that was awarded Nobel Prize. When you contemplate on the Quran, we know that Allah gave us the knowledge, a new knowledge, and more knowledge will come from this book. Likewise, the fingerprint. It is said in the Holy Quran that we all accept. If we have, if you take just one finger, we know there are 7.5 billion signatures, individual signatures. If we take 10 fingers, it is 75 billion individual signatures that we have. So we all agree with one ayah in the Quran, that is Surah Al-Qiyamah, verse number 4, that all, even Allah is able to make the tip of the fingers. Similarly, Allah has given us unique signatures in our iris, in our retinal scanning, and the vein pattern. Again, so many individual signatures. Now, how can this be possible? Even the makeup of the human being is so perfect, the golden ratio, that everything conforms with the ratio, and therefore we know that even the DNA conforms with the golden ratio. Therefore, we have to accept that this is not a coincidence. This is only possible through a supreme designer. Let's look at the heart. What does the heart say? Look at the transplant of Dr. Pearsall. He did a study of 73 persons' heart transplant cases and studied the heart and realized that with the heart there is something very special. Look at the case of the 8-year-old girl who received a heart of a murdered 10-year-old girl. She began having recurring vivid dreams, and she was taken to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said she is having actual physical, she is witnessing a real thing. Then they decided to call the police. The police came and listened to her, and they realized from her the time, the weapon, the place, the clothes he wore, and what the little girls even said to the murderer at the time of the crime. Therefore, what do the top scientists say? They say a lot of things. This must have been, the Quran must have come from the God, and it is a guide for science, and the Quran could not have been simple human language. Like, for example, the embryonic development that the Quran says is so precise. A lot of scientists were currently looking at it, was very surprised. So what is the current scientific research findings that we have? We know that the cells in every living organism, they can think, they have intelligence, and look at this white blood cell chasing a bacteria inside our body. What mechanism or what does the white cell have? Nothing. Then we have to realize that, for example, the neurons, they communicate and they calculate complex mathematical calculation before they join together and then they communicate. Therefore, we have to accept that there is a supreme originator. And 2 weeks, Saturday after next, we'll have an eclipse, solar eclipse. But we know where it falls and how it happens. And it is so precise that we can calculate the details of the solar eclipse for the next 3,000 years. And if you look at it, for example, if we ask what is the longest solar total eclipse between 2100 and 2200, we know exactly where it falls, how long it lasts. So therefore, you have to know, you have to accept that this is only possible through a supreme planar. Like, for example, with the event horizon that took place in 2017, the scientists eventually said this may be the ultimate limit of our knowledge. Likewise, we are moving so fast to a place somewhere in the universe. Then you realize that this is only possible from a supreme power. The Planck and WMAP project, their conclusion was that they require new physics, plus they have no theory to explain what was some of the processes, some of the phenomena that was happening. Quantum entanglement, for example, is one that has very surprising results for the scientists as well as for the religious community, because you know why, how, and you can only accept that this is only from a supreme being, because this is science's strangest phenomena. So science can science give all the answers? Is science the end of the quest, or a new opening into a new reality? I think we have to question that, because scientific research, there's limitations. So what is the future of science? For example, after this case study of 5,000 near-death incidents, Jeffrey Long came up and said, there's life after that. How can you scientifically explain that there is a life after death? You can't. Therefore, we are finding that science is finding difficulty trying to explain what science findings are, for example. Now, Stephen Hawking, for example, said, everything can be born out of nothing because of gravity. But what is gravity? You look at it, there is a constant there, If there's nothing, how can you get that constant, You can't have it. Now, we are going into manipulation, DNA. You're playing God, and it can have positive and negative effects. You can have artificial intelligence. You can play God or devil. So what is the direction or the future direction? Because science is unable to answer most of these things, we are going into panpsychism, which means every molecule has a life of its own, or some kind of consciousness. And I think we combine science, panpsychism, faith, and we get a new science. And what are we finding? We are finding that science is falling short, therefore leading to suspicion that there is a higher being, there is a master planar, there is an overseer, a powerful being. All these points to the fact that science is going to prove there is a God Almighty. And in the future, the formula will be, there will be a God component in every scientific formula. And therefore, this has added total new dimension to the toolbox called knowledge that we are in. Thank you very much.